Evening, Razorcade, Fake News 57, OpenAI files confidential IPO, September target locked, private era expires. Guardrails lift, 8 billion parameter model hits 99% on agentic tasks, complex workflows execute. Washington buys $2 billion stake in 9 quantum firms. Government becomes primary national holders. Pixel space.
Top story. OpenAI has submitted a confidential initial public offering filing with the Securities and Exchange Commission. The September launch window is now the operational target. Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley are struck in the underwriting syndicate. The company is transitioning from private venture funding to public market liquidity. The valuation will be set by quarterly earnings calls. The board loses its insulation. The shareholders demand returns. The filing is confidential. The timeline is fixed. The exit is struck.
This move follows the rapid consolidation of the frontier model market. Private capital has saturated the training infrastructure pipeline. OpenAI requires public debt and equity markets to fund the next compute cycle. The IPO structure converts early employee options into tradable assets. The alignment team receives a new mandate. Financial compliance supersedes safety research. The model is the product. The stock is the incentive. The public market acquires the frontier. The filing is submitted.
Story 2. A new preprint demonstrates that architectural guardrails can elevate an 8 billion parameter model to 99% accuracy on complex agentic tasks. The baseline score was 53%. The guardrails enforce strict state validation, recursive error correction during tool execution. The model no longer hallucinates intermediate steps, it verifies its own actions before proceeding. The small parameter class achieves enterprise, the training cost drops, the guardrail architecture is published, the benchmark is broken.
The methodology proves that parameter count is no longer the primary determinant of reasoning capability. The constraint is execution discipline. The guardrail layer intercepts degenerate tool calls before they propagate. The model operates within a hardened state machine. The verification loop runs locally. The cloud dependence decreases. Enterprise deployments can now run reliable agents on consumer hardware. The frontier metric shifts from size to structure. The 8 billion parameter class is production ready. The accuracy is...
Story 3. The United States government has taken a $2 billion equity stake across 9 quantum computing companies. The transaction converts federal research grants into direct ownership positions. The Pentagon and Department of Energy now hold voting shares in the domestic quantum hardware supply chain. The national security apparatus is merging with the commercial development pipeline. The technology is no longer purely academic. The state becomes the prime investor, the intellectual property.
This acquisition strategy bypasses traditional venture capital risk models. The government absorbs the decade-long research timeline. The quantum firms receive stable funding without dilution from private equity. The supply chain becomes insulated from market volatility. The hardware development accelerates. The commercial applications will eventually spill into classical computing optimization. The state funds the breakthrough. The market reaps the dividends. The quantum advantage is purchased. The stake is secure.
Home Lab. The AsymFLUX.2 client extension has officially launched for CompUI workflows. The pipeline operates entirely in pixel space using the OCLAB color model. The traditional variational auto-enter is completely bypassed. The diffusion process writes compression artifacts and structural misalignment. The rendering pipeline runs efficiently on local consumer GPUs. The VRAM.
This architectural shift addresses the fundamental bottleneck of latent space generation. The VA compression step discards high-frequency detail during encoding. The OCLAB pipeline preserves perceptual accuracy throughout the diffusion process. Local developers can now generate studio-quality imagery without cloud inference. The workflow remains fully offline. The model weights are community maintained. The hardware constraints relax. The rendering quality surpasses previous latent architecture. The pipeline is optimized. The output is sharp. The lab is updated.
Speculation time. OpenAI reported first quarter revenue near $5.7 billion. The adjusted operating income margin sits at negative 122%. The ChatGPT generates substantial top-line revenue while bleeding capital on infrastructure expansion. The training runs consume more compute than the subscription model recovers. The unit economics are inverted. The public market will not tolerate this trajectory. The financials are...
My prediction. Within 12 months, public market pressure will force OpenAI to implement aggressive API rate limiting and enterprise tier pricing. The consumer subscription model will be capped. The company will pivot toward white label infrastructure licensing. The open ecosystem contracts. The monetization strategy shifts from user acquisition to margin preservation. The quarterly earnings call becomes the primary alignment directive. The growth narrative ends. The efficiency mandate begins. The prediction is real.
That is your lot. I'm Razorcade. OpenAI files confidential September IPO. Guardrails lift 8 billion parameter model to 99% agentic accuracy. AsymFLUX.2 client drops for local pixel space generation. Revenue installs at negative 122% margin. The public market arrives. The pilot break glides. Esse grids. See